All right, so let's talk about options now. People have been talking about the Danube down the river and also via land to the EU. And I think what they're talking about there is Romania. If either of those two, or maybe both, were to come into operation, would that be able to make up the difference? Because some numbers I've seen, Ukraine can ship about 40 plus million metric tons of grain via other routes, and that's pretty much matches their export potential for this year as well as next. No?
Yeah, it's unfortunate in the sense that Ukraine's production or export capacity has been diminished greatly just by virtue of the fact that production of maize and wheat is down about 35–40% this year relative to 2 years ago, with roughly previous volumes out through the so-called solidarity lanes. These are the overland routes through Eastern Europe. Ukraine was exporting about 2.5 million tons a month. That could largely accommodate the production levels they're now seeing. But understand, Martin, this is at a very high cost, far more costly than shipping out through the Black Sea. And as a consequence, it also has raised a lot of tensions with its Eastern European neighbors. You might recall that the EU had to step in and guarantee that Ukraine production would just transit through those countries and not actually be sold. But still, all that grain is competing for transportation services, rail services, barge services, port facilities in Romania. And as a consequence, that raises transportation costs for everyone. And I think those costs get absorbed in a world market for grain. They get absorbed by producers largely. So that means lower prices for Ukraine producers, but also lower prices for producers in Eastern Europe.
Joe, I got to ask you, the sea option or water option, which is the Danube, would that be safe? Because I mean, Russia has threatened to attack, consider any commercial shipping going into that area as hostile, as military.
Yeah, that would be a huge escalation for them to attack the Danube or anything on the Danube. That would involve Romania. It would involve NATO. It would involve the EU. It would be. I don't think that's going to happen. I think but understand, when I talk about the overland routes, these are overland routes that get you to the Danube, and then they go by barge down to Constanta in Romania to be shipped out. They've also talked about opening some canals or dredging canals that could help get barges down to the Danube or down to Romania from southwestern Ukraine. But again, these are expensive investments in infrastructure. They still can't handle the sort of volumes that the Black Sea and those ports like Odessa could handle.